Hey class. All right, so here we are at the halfway point of the class. And really what we're gonna do today is sum up where we've been and kind of where we're going. So I'm gonna switch up the syllabus just slightly because I think at this point, you guys have done phenomenal work. Like seriously, you've done such incredible assignments. It's really above my expectations considering we're literally in a pandemic. So I wanna give you some ease for the week so you don't have to kind of like scramble to get some deadlines done. So if any of you have work that you need to catch up on, this is your week to get things in without any penalty. But that being said, I'm going to introduce to you the midterm, which really isn't that difficult. But I do want you to know that we're going to have a midterm to do, which is kind of just part of your final grade. And I think you'll find it pretty fun, although no homework is really fun in any way. But this does give you the opportunity to kind of express how you want to do your research or find an approach to social media critical analysis. So I'll get to that in just a bit. But first, I want to sum up where we've been before we get into where we're going. So where we've been is covering memes, virals, influencers, and what we've really been doing all that time is covering what I call, or what many people call, and what the industry calls, the attention economy. The attention economy is kind of what we've done to ourselves over the course of the last several years, where we've converted our eyes, our ability to see things and hear things, into something that's not just an economy of screen grabbing and time spent, that's the term that the social media sites use, but also a way of monetizing it, commodification, the way in which people can convert eyeballs, time spent into actual money. And that's a type of thing that social media itself has a byproduct of. It wasn't in its original intent of social media, but within the structure of capitalism, it always becomes something that's going to be commodified. And to those who can do it, good for you. I mean, that's just one more edge over other people's ideas of what you could do inside of some sort of gig or side hustle or something. If you're able to monetize or amplify your work into some way that it profits in your way, I mean, good, that's great. I think you figured out some sort of method. As you know from my research, my big concern of all of that happens to be with something known as grift. And grifting is when you're really part of a scheme or some part of a structure that's not really well thought through and it's more of a flash in the pan, something that occurs temporarily or occurs as a hot moment, and it doesn't really have a long-lasting impact. So what ends up happening with a grift is that it becomes some sort of an extreme measure. And what I mean by extreme, I don't mean like dangerous. I mean that you have to continually up the attention economy until it becomes something more extreme and something more attached to a future of changing trends. So when trends change, people get used to them and we normalize them. And so what happens with a grift is that you have to keep becoming more extreme to kind of push those limits to the next one. So that's where my concerns come. So what we've talked about so far is memes. Memes, of course, are the perfect attention economy because they're reductionist media. And one of the things about memes, especially in the research that we've done here, is that memes contain so much more text than we're used to. They're not just an image that you look at, they're not just something that is funny and you pass along it, but it's part of language itself. I had a good conversation the other day with a journalist and cultural analysis, Matt Klein, and we were talking about how memes are decadent. It's kind of the way that you would have like a really rich chocolate cake or something where it's like, you have the multiple flavors of chocolate in it, and sometimes you get that flavor of salt in there too. And your taste buds have this unique ability to feel all that once, but you feel it's rich, it's a lot going on. That's kind of like how some memes are. Some memes are so decadent because when you look at them, they mean one thing, but as you slowly peel away their layers, you get an appreciation for all that extra nuance and meta text, the extra ability to understand information underneath it, which makes you more savvy. It makes you a better reader of the internet, and your internet fluencies go up. Then we went into virals, the idea of virality. And virality is truly part of the attention economy because virality is the opposite of long tail. That's a new term for you. Virality means you get a lot of attention really quickly and it rises a spike, but you really don't keep it long term. And that's why I always say that attention economies and grifts always lead to the extreme, is because you kind of get that, many people talk about, it's like that poster's high. Like when something you've done actually goes viral or something you've done actually gets a lot of attention, you can't really understand that dopamine rush. And that was explained in Generation Like. And you want to chase that over and over again. Virality is something slightly different than memetics, although memes can be viral. But virality is the idea that something is trending at a specific moment in order to transfer that knowledge from one trend and its larger space in a micro bit of that trend to you or to somebody else. They're relatable like virals, but viral media is much more fast. Long tail, on the other hand, which is the opposite of viral media, usually means that you keep an audience, let's say it's several hundred, and your several hundred people are your long tail. It's the people who will stick by you regardless of how viral you may get in any specific moment. That's your true audience. Long tail media has much more value than viral media, which is why the MCU has developed over the course of 12 years or so the ability to have a long tail audience. Viral media might be within speculation about episodes on WandaVision, but it really isn't what the show is about. It will keep an audience regardless of what the trends or virality within it are. And finally, we went over influencers. Influencers themselves are, I'm not going to use this word negatively, but they're manipulators of the attention economy. And what manipulators are is somebody like a TV host or an anchor, someone who knows how to use their medium to express themselves in such a way that other people look to them for advice. They see them as a person of influence, as somebody of their peers, as somebody relatable. So an influencer knows how to be fluent in the media that kind of constructs their reality, whether that be fluency in memes, fluency in viral videos, fluency in viral communication, or the ability just to say something that you enjoy at such a level that other people might find some sort of relationality to it. And that's a real industry. We've seen that Instagram kind of invented the idea of the influencer. And like I said, if you read Sarah Fryer's book, No Filter, she explains how Instagram kind of came up with the concept, but it would have been invented anyway. The Kardashians really do take a good originality, not originality, but the origin stories for influencing come from them, but that's also because Instagram worked with them at the time. They also worked with several animal channels, cute animals that were around at the time. And so pet influencers became quite a thing. As we move forward into new social media platforms, which we'll get to at the end of the semester, and part of your midterm is to kind of investigate some of that, some new platforms like Clubhouse will be something interesting to look at because it's not a social media we're used to. It's more like a conference call or a party line. You guys are probably too young to know what party lines are. I'm too young to know what party lines are. But our parents had this ability to like kind of pick up the phone and dial a number and you'd be cut into a clubhouse, a room of people speaking. It's kind of like that, except now we have control over who's the moderator who's speaking on stage. It's an interesting app and we'll get to it later. What's interesting about what I want to talk about before we go on is that how the attention economy itself is part of our overall communication system now. It's become very normalized in terms of how we understand media. And this is where that whole idea of both sidesisms come from, is that we operate as humans on something known as the hedonic treadmill. And that's like the equivalent of the treadmill may get faster, but you're still on the treadmill. Like you're still on the thing. It's the equivalent of like when you buy something and it makes you feel really good temporarily, but then it just normalizes. It doesn't become new anymore. That's the same thing that happens with viral media, is that we kind of normalize its experience and we kind of move on from there. And the problem with viral media, memes, influencers, is that people find ways of entering that industry without origin. And that was what I was trying to get at when I was talking about Lauren Southern. Lauren Southern is using the tools that Tyler Oakley and other influencers invented to jump in late. She jumps in 2016, almost a decade after many of the influencers started, but she was using it for fairly nefarious reasons to try to get her ideas out there. But because her ideas may not align with many people's, what it would be humanistic traits, but what she was doing was keeping the attention economy because she was using the technique that was tried and true. And that was the point I was trying to get with Casey Neistat's video, is that he's Casey Neistat the brand, Samsung the brand, the YouTube influencers that are brand, they're all the brands that are inside of there. So they figured out these multiple levels. And that of course led us to why we wanted to work on Gary Vaynerchuk's strategy. Because that's a strategy, that's an influencer strategy. If you could figure out your tent pole or pillar content, as he calls it, and create these micro content pieces, you could end up figuring out how to manipulate that type of attention economy. You could figure it out because you're fluent in those platforms. The problem then becomes the secondary industries. So this is where we're going to switch to the second half of the class, and this is kind of teasing toward it. In the secondary industries, there was a recent article, which I'm going to share in the Substack. You could read it, you don't have to, about clout mining. And clout mining is a secondary industry. Secondary industry is when your viral tweet goes viral. Some grift industries that are separate from influencer industries start asking you to promote their products. So that's why you see like the sparkle lamps on the ceilings. That's why you see certain products over and over again in the responses. It used to be like somebody's tweet went viral and they'd immediately follow up with, follow me on check out my SoundCloud, or see my Instagram page. They would self-promote. But now the secondary industries have figured out that there's a second way of monetizing those tweets by putting in the replies their own products. Whether they be useless or not, that is because the attention economy is leading people to now the normalized reaction to clicking the reply. Because your eye has become attuned to somebody saying, check out my SoundCloud, but now you're checking out somebody else's product. So over the last few weeks, last few years, we've noticed a weird event that has been occurring on social media in general. Social media used to be like a place to go where you'd also visit. So there was other websites and social media was kind of a place to go and communicate. But I'd say at this point, the internet has basically been collapsed into 4 or 5 websites. 4 or 5 URLs pretty much operate the web at this point. So when you're on Instagram, when you're looking at some of your memes, you're not always looking at memes, you're looking at tweets that have been screen captured and posted on Instagram. And on Twitter, you're often seeing TikToks. People have migrated to TikTok over because you can't share TikToks directly into Substack without Twitter, so they know cross-posting is another way of doing it. Facebook posts are often screen grabbed and posted directly onto Twitter as well. And all of these things become part of it. So now we've reduced the internet to 4 websites that share each other on other websites. And that's basically pretty insular and pretty bad. But what happens is that those viralities, that attention economy, starts recycling itself. And this is the thing where I need you to start thinking very critically about how we start understanding reusable media, recycled media, and what that does to us. Is that a thing that's really smart for us to operate with? So over the past couple of weeks, these are some of the tweets that I've noticed that are funny, but they're really just relatable pieces of information. The Agnes Twitter meme, the winking meme that she had posted, became a meme from WandaVision, but then it became like a reaction meme. So like some quotes of some of the tweets that said, me telling my computer I'll update everything tomorrow. And it's her, winking like, okay, There's obviously no spoilers, but if you've watched WandaVision, she's an interesting character in that. There's also been reused memes of an old image of a dried up potato. And I think what happens is that meme keeps recurring that every time we forget it. So it goes through its own viral cycles. And we put something through a cycle, you see this potato with a new caption every so many years, and it gets the same amount of likes. But then there's random tweets that end up becoming super viral that for no reason other than the fact that it's temporarily funny. 2 tweets that stuck out this week, one from @Flitter. Babies be like, help me or I will literally die. That's the tweet. That's it. Just that quote. But it got like 650,000 likes and who knows, 75,000 or so like retweets or something. Yeah, if you don't help a baby, they're literally going to die. I don't know why that's relatable, but when you're scrolling a feed and you're doom scrolling, which is the scrolling mindlessly and basically absorbing the horrors of the internet, sometimes like punctuation marks like those sort of give us that reprieve, and that's why it goes viral, because it's something to say, just this light little non-thinking piece of media that you could interact with, and it has no complications with the way you interact with the media. So another one, here's one from Aubrey Bell. It looks like, if I say I could eat, we've got about 32 minutes tops before I'm flat out a different person. Yeah, it's called being hangry. That's what it is. So it sounds weird when I read it, but when it's on your feed, it's funny. And that's because the attention economy has drawn us into these spaces, and they're literally like these moments or these, almost like an EKG, when you watch a beat or a pulse. They're the high points in your doomed feed. And those high points are part of what make us want to stay on the platform. So going forward, as we move into the second half of the class, I'm moving what would have been this week, 1 week out, to give you guys a little bit of space, to give you some time to catch up with your work, but also to pitch your midterm, which is fairly easy. Let me just preface where we're going with that. In the second half of the class, we're going to talk about what happens with the attention economy and surveillance capitalism and the ability to be tracked, and we're going to go further into algorithms. What happens when you do like a viral tweet? What happens to your Instagram media environment or your Twitter media environment? The reason why I had you look at McLuhan, I found the book, by the way, it is massive, as you could tell. It is so big that it even has one of these little funny like bookmark things in it. So you can actually see it's like, you know, it's a big book. And yes, I had to read most of that, and that's what I had to do. Anyway, when you start thinking about things as media environments, which is the ability to have not just media on a screen, but the environment in which you exist physically, we're going to start interrogating that coming up in the second half of the class. I don't want to tease too much at this point because I really want to make sure that you focus on where you've been and how to sum that up. So for homework this week, it's fairly easy. It's just one assignment, and it's assignment, not a discussion. And the assignment is to post an article that you're going to analyze for your midterm. Here's the two-part rubric. Okay, first, you're going to identify an article similar to the one that I'm sharing about clout mining. Something that I haven't shared with you yet, but something that does a deeper and more significant analysis of a social media aspect. Not social media itself, but an aspect of social media. You could find this type of thing with anybody who's who's a reporter on the digital media beat. So Taylor Lorenz, Ben Collins and Brandy Zadrozny of NBC News. Taylor Lorenz is at NY Times. Will Sommer at the Daily Beast. Vice has a lot of these. There's a bunch of places to go find information that are nuanced pieces of the internet. People who are literally studying how the internet works. Julia Alexander at The Verge, terrific. Ryan Broderick from Garbage Days newsletter. Number of places that you could really go and find information. What you're going to do is find a very specific part of social media, whether that be a subculture, fandom, Black Twitter, whether that be a viral aspect, whether that be part of the grift industry, whether that be part of language aspects, whether that be memetics, but some way in which the internet actually operates. And what I want you to do is find an article, that's first. Second, you're going to analyze this article, but for homework, I just want you to find the article. Okay, this is a pitch. But I want you to tell me how you're going to analyze it, because it's really a three-parter. How would you explain this article to someone who has not yet taken this class, someone who is not yet fluent in internet, or somebody who doesn't really know how these things operate? Your essay, very short, is explaining to somebody who's not really thinking about social media in any critical way. You're going to take this article and point out what specific nuances make this important to explain to another person. So let's say it's an article about the game stonks. Let's say it's that. Why is that important? Why should we be looking at it? But not just why should we be looking at it, but what does it mean to the internet as a whole? And why are you explaining that to someone who doesn't know it enough? So think of somebody who's like your grandparents, or like a friend who's they barely use the internet, or they use it enough, but they're really not keen on how to critically analyze anything. So you're going to explain from a critical perspective, somebody who's literally studying this in college, whatever your major is, it doesn't matter, you're studying social media, and you're going to explain why it's important to know this aspect or this detail about it. The reason you're submitting your article is because I can give you constructive criticism. Yeah, this is great, go for it. It's probably the most likely answer you're gonna hear from me. Or you're gonna see me say, this could be a little more, you can find something a little more nuanced, a little more in-depth than this one specific article. So, look again. Or if you feel like your article isn't gonna be like, okay, I don't think he's gonna like this, you should really maybe then put two articles. Now, I like this article, I wanna analyze it, but I think if you don't like this article, I'd like to analyze this one. It can be part of any part of the social media spectrum, on any platform, even ones we haven't covered yet. So that's it. The rubric for the midterm will be basically posted sometime after I see these articles. Very short midterm, but I want to see your article first. It's kind of like proposing a thesis statement. So basically your homework is the thesis statement followed by the article, and that's it. So taken up enough of your time today. I want you to spend a little bit more time not having to think about the homework and the deadlines, but we do have one deadline with one article. Give you time to do some research on that. And we'll catch up next Friday. I'll be back on my schedule. I had a really tough week. And we'll be going into the secondary markets, surveillance capitalism, and we're going to go into the bigger aspects of what is social media outside the platforms. So until then, stay healthy, stay well, and stay curious.